The alarm screamed through the cargo bay at the exact moment Lieutenant Kira Vance heard the sound that made her blood freeze. Not the klaxon, not the hull breach warning. The high-pitched shriek of pain from Whisker, her gray tabby, locked somewhere in the chaos of tumbling crates and venting atmosphere. The Zenthari boarding party had breached Section 7. Protocol demanded she seal the blast doors, trap them in the cargo hold, let the vacuum finish what their weapons started. Commander Drake was shouting orders through her earpiece. The colony transport ship Meridian was minutes from total compromise. 15,000 sleeping colonists in cryo. Her responsibility. Her duty, Whisker screamed again. Kira's hand hovered over the blast door control. The Zenthari were through the airlock now, 4 of them, massive reptilian warriors in black combat armor. They moved with predator efficiency, spreading out through the cargo bay. One kicked a supply crate. It spun into the void through the hull breach, tumbling into space. Her cat was in there somewhere, trapped, hurt. The Zenthari were seconds from the corridor junction that led to cryo storage. Once they reached it, once they planted their charges, every sleeping soul on this ship would die frozen in their dreams. Whisker wailed, a sound of pure agony. Something snapped inside Kira's chest, something that had been wound too tight for too long. She'd lost her daughter to the Zenthari 3 years ago during the Proxima raids. She'd watched her home burn from orbit while she followed orders and held formation. She'd swallowed every scream, every tear, every molecule of rage because that's what soldiers did. Not anymore. Kira yanked the manual override, killed the blast door sequence, and grabbed the plasma rifle mounted on the wall. She didn't run toward the cargo bay. She sprinted. The first Zenthari turned at the sound of her boots on metal decking. It raised its particle cannon. She shot it through the face before it could fire. The second warrior roared, a deep bellow that would have made most humans freeze. Kira roared back, a sound torn from somewhere primal and unstoppable. The Zenthar actually hesitated, just for a heartbeat. She put 3 plasma rounds through its chest. The third and fourth Zenthari opened fire. Energy bolts seared past her head. One grazed her shoulder, burning through her uniform. She didn't slow. She ducked behind a cargo container, rolled, came up firing. The third warrior went down. The fourth charged her. 300 pounds of scaled muscle and rage, claws extended, jaws wide. Kira dropped the rifle, pulled her combat knife, and smiled. Tastric field name. When a cat screamed in pain, a woman roared louder, and the pack fell silent. The Zenthari warrior closed the distance in 2 massive strides. Its claws swept toward her throat in an arc designed to decapitate. Kira dropped beneath the strike, felt the air pressure change above her head, and drove her knife upward into the gap between its armor plates. The blade sank deep into its abdomen. Hot purple blood sprayed across her face. The warrior howled and backhanded her across the cargo bay. She hit a bulkhead hard enough to crack ribs. Pain exploded through her chest. Her vision blurred. The Zenthari advanced, one clawed hand pressed against the wound she'd given it, the other reaching for the plasma pistol on its hip. Whisker yowled from somewhere behind a stack of medical containers. Kira pushed off the wall, ignoring the grinding sensation in her ribs, and launched herself at the wounded warrior. It fired. The shot went wide. She crashed into it with her full weight, knocked the pistol away, and grabbed her knife with both hands. She twisted the blade. The Zenthar's scream turned wet and gurgling. It collapsed. She didn't wait to watch it die. She was already moving, scrambling over supply crates toward the sound of her cat. Whisker was wedged between 2 containers, one back leg caught in a cargo net that had come loose during the breach. The cat's eyes were wild with pain and terror. "I've got you," Kira whispered, cutting through the net with quick, precise movements. Whisker's leg was broken but not severed. The cat immediately tried to bite her. She wrapped him in her jacket despite the protest, tucked him against her chest with one arm, and grabbed her rifle with the other. That's when the secondary breach alarm started screaming. More Zenthari. Section 9 this time. Commander Drake's voice crackled in her earpiece, barely audible through static. "Vance, where the hell are you? We're reading 4 hostiles down in 7, but you're not responding to." 8 more coming through Section 9, Kira interrupted, already running toward the access corridor. They're trying to flank cryo storage. Negative, Lieutenant. Fall back to the bridge. That's an order. Security teams are en route to... Kira ripped the earpiece out and crushed it under her boot. The corridor to Section 9 was a straight shot. 30 meters of narrow passageway with no cover. Tactical suicide. The Zenthari would see her coming. They'd cut her down before she got halfway. She ran anyway. Whisker made a small, pained sound against her chest. She tightened her grip on him, felt his rapid heartbeat against her broken ribs, and pushed her legs faster. The corridor opened into Section 9's main cargo area. She could see them now through the doorway. 2 were already placing demolition charges on the bulkhead that separated cargo from cryo storage. Kira didn't slow down. She fired while running, full automatic, burning through her rifle's charge pack in 5 seconds. 3 Zenthari dropped. The others scattered returning fire. Energy bolts punched holes in the walls around her. One hit her rifle, melted it into slag. She threw the useless weapon at the nearest warrior's head and kept charging. A human running at 8 armored warriors with a broken cat and no weapon should not have made them hesitate, but they did. For just a moment they stopped firing and stared at the small bloodied woman sprinting at them like she was the predator and they were prey. That moment cost them. Kira dove behind a fuel drum, grabbed a fusion torch from a nearby tool rack, and ignited it. The blue-white flame roared to life. She threw it at the closest Zenthari. It hit the warrior's ammunition belt. The explosion vaporized 2 of them and knocked the others off their feet. She was already moving, grabbing a dead warrior's particle cannon, spinning, firing. The weapon kicked like a mule. Each shot took down a target. 4 left. 3. The last Zenthari, larger than the others, pulled itself upright. Its armor was scorched black. One arm hung useless. It looked at Kira with something that might have been respect or might have been hatred. Hard to tell with reptilian faces. It reached for the detonator on the demolition charges. Kira shot it through the wrist. The hand, detonator and all, tumbled across the deck. The Zenthar roared and charged her bare-handed. She dropped the cannon, pulled a plasma grenade from the warrior's own belt, armed it, and shoved it into the gap in its chest armor as it reached for her. Then she ran. The explosion turned Section 9 into a brief, brilliant star. The shockwave threw Kira through the doorway and into the corridor. She hit the deck rolling, curled around Whisker to protect him, and slid 15 feet before slamming into a support beam. Her ears rang. Blood ran from her nose. Every breath felt like knives in her chest. Whisker was still alive, still trembling against her. She forced herself upright and started moving again. The ship's intercom crackled to life. Commander Drake's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. All hands, this is the bridge. Zenthari mothership is deploying additional boarding craft. Estimate 40 hostiles inbound. Security teams to defensive positions. Engineering, I need FTL drive in 3 minutes or we're dead in space. Kira limped toward the nearest weapons locker, keyed in her override code and started loading herself down with everything she could carry. Plasma pistols on both hips, rifle across her back, grenades clipped to her belt, combat knife in her boot. She looked like a walking arsenal. Whisker poked his head out of the jacket and meowed weakly. I know, buddy, she muttered. I know it hurts. Just hold on a little longer. The deck vibrated beneath her feet. More breaches. The Zenthari were cutting through the hull in multiple locations now, overwhelming the ship's defenses through sheer numbers. Smart, efficient, exactly what she'd do if she wanted to take a vessel this size intact, except they'd made one critical mistake. They'd hurt her cat. Kira accessed a wall terminal and pulled up the ship's internal sensor grid. Red dots were appearing all over the display. Zenthari boarding parties in sections 3, 6, 11, and 14. They were spreading out, trying to secure key systems before moving on cryo storage. The security teams were falling back, establishing a defensive perimeter around the bridge and engineering. No one was protecting the colonists. She zoomed in on Section 14. 6 hostiles. They were planting charges on the cryobay's outer door. She checked the route. 2 corridors, 1 maintenance shaft, 90 seconds if she ran flat out. Her ribs screamed in protest as she started moving. She ignored them. Pain was just information. Information could be filed away and dealt with later. The maintenance shaft was a tight vertical climb, barely wide enough for her shoulders. She had to tuck Whisker inside her jacket and use both hands on the ladder rungs. Every pull sent fresh agony through her chest. Purple blood from the dead Zenthari had dried on her face and hands, sticky and thick. She smelled like ozone and burned metal and death. She reached the top of the shaft and kicked open the access panel. It crashed into a Zenthari warrior standing guard. The warrior stumbled backward in surprise. Kira shot it twice before her boots hit the deck. The other 5 Zenthari spun toward her, weapons raised. She threw a plasma grenade into their midst and dove behind a support column. The explosion was deafening in the confined space. When the smoke cleared, 3 were down. 2 were still moving, injured but combat capable. 1 was reaching for the detonator again. Kira shot that one first. Center mass. It fell backward into the door it had been trying to destroy. The last warrior roared something in its native language that probably translated to a war cry, and charged her with a vibroblade drawn. She met it head on. The blade came down. She sidestepped, grabbed its wrist, and used its own momentum to drive it face first into the support column. The impact dented the warrior's helmet. It staggered. She kicked its knee backward with a wet cracking sound. It dropped. She put her pistol against the back of its skull and fired. Silence fell over Section 14 except for the crackling of small fires and the hiss of escaping atmosphere from damaged panels. Kira moved to the cryobay door and keyed in her access code. The massive door slid open. Beyond it, row upon row of cryopods stretched into the darkness, each one containing a sleeping colonist. Families, children, people who trusted the crew to deliver them safely to New Eden. She sealed the door behind her and set the manual override. It would take the Zenthari 20 minutes to cut through now, maybe 30 if they didn't have heavy equipment. Her earpiece was gone, but she found a wall-mounted comm panel. She activated it. Bridge, this is Vance. Section 14 is secure. Cryobay is sealed and... Lieutenant Vance! Drake's voice cut through, sharp as broken glass. You disobeyed a direct order. You abandoned your post. You're facing court-martial when this is over. Do you understand me? Kira looked down at Whisker, who had managed to poke his head out of the jacket again despite everything. The cat's eyes were half closed with pain, but he was purring, a tiny rumbling sound against her broken ribs. Understood, sir, she said quietly. How many more are coming? A pause. Then Drake's voice again, softer this time. Sensors show 32 hostiles still active. They're regrouping for a coordinated assault on engineering and the bridge. If they take either one, we're finished. What about the FTL drive? Still offline. Chief Engineer Canton says 15 minutes minimum. We don't have 15 minutes. I'm aware, Lieutenant. That's why I'm ordering all security personnel to fall back and defend critical systems. The colonists will have to... No, Kira said. The word came out flat and hard. The colonists are non-negotiable. Vance, be reasonable. We can't defend everything. We have to prioritize. I'll handle it. You'll handle 32 Zenthari warriors? By yourself? Have you lost your mind? Kira checked her ammunition. 2 pistols, half-charged. Rifle at 40%. 4 grenades. 1 knife. 1 extremely pissed-off woman with broken ribs and a wounded cat. Probably, she admitted. But they hurt Whisker, sir. They hurt my cat. And I think it's time the Zenthari learned what happens when you make that mistake. She cut the connection before Drake could respond, gently placed Whisker in an empty supply locker with a water bowl and emergency medical kit, and sealed it. Stay here, she whispered. I'll be back soon. Then she walked into the corridor to find 32 warriors who just made the worst decision of their lives. Feel name. When a cat screamed in pain, a woman roared louder, and the pack fell silent after the Zenthari were regrouping in Section 6, using it as a staging area for their final push. Kira watched them through a ventilation grate, counting heads, assessing weapons, looking for weaknesses. 30, 2 warriors. They'd organized into 4 assault teams of 8, professional, disciplined. They were checking equipment, redistributing ammunition, treating their wounded. She could have called for backup, Could have waited for the security teams to arrive. Could have done a dozen things that would have been smarter, safer, more tactically sound. Instead, she dropped a plasma grenade through the grate and opened fire. The grenade detonated in the center of their formation. Bodies flew, armor shattered. The survivors scattered, searching for the source of the attack. Kira was already moving, racing through the ventilation system to the next grate, firing down into the confusion. She dropped 3 more before they pinpointed her location and started shooting back. Energy bolts tore through the vent around her. She crawled forward through the narrow shaft, ignoring the searing heat of near misses, and emerged in a side corridor. 6 Zenthari were charging toward her position. She pulled both pistols and fired as she ran straight at them. The first 2 went down before they could react. The third got a shot off that burned a line across her thigh. She stumbled, kept firing, took it down. The fourth swung a vibroblade at her head. She ducked, shot it in the knee, then the throat as it fell. The fifth and sixth opened fire together. She dove into a roll, came up behind a support beam, and threw her last grenade. The explosion bought her 3 seconds. She used them to reload 1 pistol and charge the remaining warriors before they recovered. Close quarters now. Too close for guns. She holstered the pistols and drew her knife. The first Zenthari swung a clawed fist at her face. She blocked with her forearm, felt bones crack, and drove her knife up under its chin. It gurgled and collapsed. The second grabbed her from behind in a crushing grip. Broken ribs ground together. Her vision went white with pain. She drove her head backward into its face. Once. Twice. 3 times. Something broke. The grip loosened. She spun free, grabbed its arm, and snapped it at the elbow. The warrior screamed. She cut its throat. Silence fell. 6 dead Zenthari at her feet. 26 still active somewhere on the ship. Kira leaned against the wall, breathing hard, cradling her broken arm. Blood ran down her leg from the burn wound. Her ribs felt like broken glass grinding with every breath. She should have been done. Should have collapsed. Should have called for medical extraction. She pushed off the wall and kept moving. The ship's intercom crackled. Drake's voice. All hands. FTL drive is online. Repeat. FTL drive is online. Preparing to jump in 60 seconds. A jump would strand the Zenthar mothership in normal space, leave the boarding parties trapped on the Meridian with no way home. They'd know that. They'd be desperate now, racing to accomplish their mission before the jump. Kira accessed a wall terminal with her good hand and pulled up the sensor grid. The remaining Zenthari had split up. One team was pushing hard toward engineering. Another was trying to fight through to the bridge. The third was heading back toward cryo storage. 8. Moving. Fast. They'd reach the sealed door in less than a minute. She couldn't make it in time. Not with her injuries. Not at the speed they were moving. But she didn't need to make it to the door. She just needed to make it to the junction point where 3 corridors intersected. The route the Zenthari had to pass through. Kira ran. Each step was agony. Her broken arm swung uselessly at her side. Blood loss was making her lightheaded. She could feel herself slowing down, her body giving out. She ran anyway. The junction came into view. She had maybe 10 seconds before the Zenthari arrived. She looked around desperately for anything she could use. A fire suppression system, emergency bulkhead controls, a coolant line running along the ceiling. The coolant line. Kira raised her pistol and shot the line 3 times. Superheated coolant sprayed across the corridor in a pressurized stream, instantly freezing everything it touched. The deck. The walls. The air itself seemed to crystallize. The Zenthari team rounded the corner at full sprint and hit the frozen corridor. The lead warrior's feet went out from under it. It crashed down, slid into the wall. The others tried to stop, couldn't find traction, tumbled in a chaotic pile of limbs and armor. Kira shot the coolant line twice more. The spray intensified, coating the struggling warriors in layers of ice. They roared and thrashed, trying to break free, but the ice kept building, hardening, trapping them in place. She walked into the corridor, pistol raised, and methodically shot each frozen warrior through the head. 8 shots, 8 bodies. The ice turned purple with their blood. 18 left. The deck lurched beneath her feet. The familiar sensation of an FTL jump building. 30 seconds until the ship entered hyperspace. The remaining Zenthari would know it too. They'd be frantic now, throwing everything at their objectives. Kira accessed the terminal again. The team heading for engineering had been stopped by security forces. 6 hostiles down, 2 wounded and retreating. The team pushing for the bridge was pinned down by concentrated fire from Drake's personal guard. 4 down, the rest falling back. That left 6 warriors unaccounted for. The sensors showed them in Section 12, moving fast, heading toward. Her heart stopped. They weren't going for strategic targets anymore. They were going for the civilian quarters, the crew's personal cabins, the area where off-duty personnel slept, where families lived, where children were. The jump countdown hit 15 seconds. The Zenthari wouldn't have time to plant charges or accomplish anything meaningful, but they had time to kill, time to hurt, time to make humanity pay for their losses. Kira started running again. Her body was beyond pain now, running on something deeper than adrenaline, or training, or duty. She wasn't thinking anymore, wasn't planning, wasn't even really aware of what she was doing. She was just moving. Forward. Always forward. Toward the threat. Toward the danger. Toward 6 warriors who'd made the mistake of threatening children. 10 seconds to jump. She hit the corridor to civilian quarters at full speed and saw them. 6 Zenthari. The lead one had already kicked in a door. A woman's scream came from inside. A child crying. Kira didn't slow down, didn't take cover, didn't do anything except roar. A sound that came from somewhere primal and ancient, and opened fire with everything she had left. 5 seconds to jump. The lead warrior spun toward her. She shot it through the eye. The second raised its weapon. She shot it in the throat. The third, fourth, and fifth started firing. Energy bolts seared past her head. One hit her shoulder. Another grazed her side. She kept firing, kept moving forward, closing the distance. 2 seconds. The 6th warrior, the largest of them, stepped into her path. It didn't have a weapon drawn. It just stood there, massive and armored and absolutely sure of its physical superiority. It reached for her with claws extended. 1 second. Kira dropped both empty pistols, pulled her knife with her good hand, and drove it into the warrior's throat with every ounce of strength she had left. 0. The universe twisted. Reality bent. The FTL drive engaged, and Lieutenant Kira Vance, covered in blood both purple and red, broken and burned and barely standing, watched the last Zenthari warrior collapse at her feet as the Meridian jumped to hyperspace. The transition to hyperspace felt like falling and flying at the same time. Kira's legs finally gave out. She collapsed against the corridor wall, slid down to the deck, and sat there breathing in ragged gasps. Her vision tunneled. The edges of the world went fuzzy and dark. The door the Zenthari had kicked in creaked open. A woman emerged, maybe 30 years old, holding a little boy against her chest. The child couldn't have been more than 5. Both of them were shaking. The woman stared at Kira with wide eyes, taking in the blood and burns and broken bones. "You saved us," the woman whispered. Kira tried to respond, but her voice wouldn't work. She just nodded once and closed her eyes. Boots thundered down the corridor. Security teams finally arriving, medics shouting orders. Someone was checking her pulse, scanning her injuries, calling for a stretcher. Commander Drake's voice cut through the chaos, closer now, speaking directly to her. "Vance, Lieutenant Vance, can you hear me?" She opened her eyes. Drake was kneeling beside her, his face pale. Behind him, the corridor was filled with crew members and security personnel, all of them staring at the scene. 6 dead Zenthari warriors, 1 barely conscious woman, purple blood everywhere. "Whisker," Kira managed to croak out. "Section 14, supply locker, broken leg, needs medical." Drake blinked. "Your cat? Get him, please." The commander studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Canton, send a medic to Section 14. There's an injured cat in a supply locker that apparently just saved 15,000 lives." He looked back at Kira. "Anything else? Did we make it? Are the colonists safe?" "We're in hyperspace. The Zenthar mothership is 3 light years behind us, and we're jumping every 6 hours for the next week just to be sure. Yes, Lieutenant, the colonists are safe. All of them. Thanks to you. Kira! Let her head fall back against the wall. Good. The medics were trying to get her onto a stretcher, but she waved them off with her good hand. Wait, I need to know. How many did I... She couldn't finish the question. Drake understood anyway. Sensors tracked the entire engagement. You personally eliminated 38 Zenthari warriors. The security teams accounted for 6 more. 2 escaped in a pod before we jumped, but they won't survive long in deep space without their mothership. He paused. 38, Vance. In 40 minutes, while wounded. Alone. The number didn't feel real. She'd just been moving, reacting, doing what needed to be done. She hadn't been counting. Hadn't been thinking about tactics or strategy or anything except the next target, the next threat, the next step forward. I wasn't alone, she said quietly. I had Whisker. One of the security officers, a young man named Phillips, laughed, then stopped when he realized she was serious. Ma'am, your cat was locked in a supply locker for most of the battle. Doesn't matter. He needed me. That's what mattered. The medics finally convinced her to lie down on the stretcher. As they lifted her, she caught sight of the woman and child again. The mother had tears running down her face. She was trying to say something, but the words wouldn't come. The little boy waved at Kira with a small hand. Kira waved back with her broken arm. The pain was extraordinary, but worth it for the smile that appeared on the child's face. They carried her through the ship toward medical. Crew members lined the corridors, watching in silence as she passed. Some of them saluted, others just stared. Word had already spread. The sensors didn't lie. Everyone knew what she'd done. In medical bay, Dr. Priest, Laura Chen took one look at Kira's injuries and went pale. Broken ribs, fractured arm, 2nd-degree burns, plasma wound to the thigh, possible concussion, severe bruising, blood loss approaching critical levels. Lieutenant, you should be dead. Probably, Kira admitted, but I had things to do first. Chen started working, scanning, injecting medications, setting bones. The pain meds kicked in gradually, turning the screaming agony into a dull roar. Kira felt herself starting to drift. Doc, she mumbled. When they bring Whisker in, make sure someone stays with him. He doesn't like being alone when he's hurt. I'll personally supervise his care, Chen promised. Now rest. You've earned it. But Kira couldn't rest. Not yet. There was something nagging at her, something important she'd forgotten in the chaos. She forced her eyes open and grabbed Chen's wrist. The Zenthari, she said. They were too organized, too precise. They knew exactly where to breach, which systems to target, how to split our defenses. Someone gave them intelligence about this ship. Chen frowned. You think there's a spy? I think someone wanted those colonists dead. Or captured. Either way. This wasn't a random raid. This was planned. I'll inform Commander Drake immediately. Tell him to check the communications logs. See who had access to our flight plan, our route, our ship specifications. Whoever sold us out is probably still on board. Chen nodded and moved away to make the call. Kira lay back on the medical bed, staring at the ceiling. Her body was broken, but her mind was racing. The Zenthari had never attacked a colony transport before. They raided military vessels, supply convoys, mining stations. But civilian ships carrying sleeping families? That wasn't their pattern. Unless someone had paid them to do it. Someone who wanted to prevent these specific colonists from reaching New Eden. Someone with resources, connections, and a reason to commit mass murder. The door to medical bay slid open. A junior medic entered, carrying a small gray bundle wrapped in thermal blankets. Whisker's head poked out, eyes bright despite the splint on his back leg. The cat saw Kira and immediately started struggling to get free. Bring him here, Kira said. The medic hesitated. Ma'am, you're in critical condition. Having a cat on your bed might not be, that's in order. The medic carefully placed Whisker on the bed beside her. The cat immediately limped over on 3 legs, sniffed her face, and started purring. The sound filled the quiet medical bay like distant thunder. Kira stroked his head with her good hand. We made it, buddy. We actually made it. Whisker headbutted her chin gently, then settled down against her side, still purring. The door opened again. Commander Drake entered, his expression unreadable. He looked at Kira, at the cat, at the medical readouts showing her extensive injuries. "I've reviewed the sensor data 3 times, he said quietly. "I've consulted with tactical officers, reviewed every engagement protocol we have, and confirmed with 6 witnesses. What you did today shouldn't have been possible, but it happened. Yes, it happened." Drake pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. "The court-martial is canceled, by the way. Can't exactly prosecute someone for disobeying orders when those orders would have resulted in the death of 15,000 civilians. The Board of Inquiry will still want to interview you, but that's just procedure." "There's a traitor on this ship," Kira said. "Someone who gave the Zenthari our information." Drake's jaw tightened. "I know. I've already ordered a full investigation. Every crew member with access to classified information is being questioned. We'll find them, and when you do, they'll face justice. Military justice. The kind that doesn't offer much mercy for treason." Whisker purred louder, kneading Kira's side with his good front paw. She winced but didn't push him away. Drake watched the cat for a moment, then looked back at Kira. "I need to ask you something. When you heard your cat screaming, when you made the choice to go after him instead of following protocol, did you know what would happen? Did you know you'd end up fighting the entire boarding party alone?" Kira thought about it. "No. I just knew I couldn't leave him. Everything else just kind of followed from that. One decision, one moment, changed everything." "I guess so." Drake stood up. "Get some rest, Lieutenant. When you're recovered, we're going to have a long conversation about your future in the fleet. Because after today, that future looks very different than it did yesterday." He left. The medical bay fell quiet except for the hum of equipment and Whisker's relentless purring. Kira closed her eyes and let herself finally truly rest. Tomorrow would bring questions, investigations, and consequences. But tonight, she was alive. Her cat was alive. 15,000 colonists were safe. And somewhere out there in the cold dark of space, the Zenthari were learning a new lesson about humanity. Never hurt the cat. Kira woke to the sound of arguing voices outside Medical Bay. 3 days had passed since the battle. Her ribs were healing under regenerative therapy. The burns had faded to pink scars. Her arm was out of the cast and functional again. Whisker was asleep in a cushioned bed beside her own, his leg wrapped in a medical brace that would come off in another week. The voices grew louder. She recognized Drake's tone, sharp and angry. The other voice belonged to someone she didn't know. Deep, authoritative, not military. The door slid open. Drake entered first, followed by a man in an expensive gray suit that looked completely out of place on a military vessel. He was tall, silver-haired, maybe 60 years old. His eyes were cold and calculating. "Lieutenant Vance," the man said, extending a hand she didn't take. "My name is Gregory Ashford. I represent the Colonial Development Corporation." Kira sat up slowly, ignoring the protest from her healing ribs. "The CDC funded this colony mission. Correct. We have a significant investment in New Eden, an investment that you protected admirably." Ashford's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm here to offer you a position, head of security for all CDC colony transports. Triple your current salary. Full benefits. Your own team." "No," Ashford blinked. "I haven't even told you the compensation package. Don't care. I'm fleet. I stay fleet. The fleet doesn't pay what you're worth, Lieutenant. What you did 3 days ago, that kind of skill deserves proper recognition." Drake cleared his throat. What she did 3 days ago was defend her ship. It's what any good officer would do. "Commander, with respect, what she did was eliminate 38 trained Zenthari warriors in 40 minutes while severely wounded. That's not normal. That's exceptional. That's the kind of asset my company needs." Kira swung her legs off the bed and stood up, facing Ashford directly. "I'm not an asset. I'm a soldier, and I'm not interested in working for a corporation that might have gotten those colonists killed in the first place." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Ashford's pleasant expression vanished. "That's a serious accusation. It's a serious question. The Zenthari knew everything about this ship. Flight plan, defensive capabilities, crew complement, system vulnerabilities. That information came from somewhere. Someone with detailed access to CDC planning documents. Are you suggesting my company sold out its own colonists? I'm suggesting someone did. Whether it was your company or someone inside it, that's what the investigation will determine. Ashford turned to Drake. Commander, I must insist you control your officer. These baseless accusations could have serious legal consequences. Drake crossed his arms. Lieutenant Vance is expressing concerns shared by Fleet Intelligence. The investigation is ongoing. Until it's complete, I'd suggest the CDC cooperates fully rather than making threats about legal consequences. I see. Ashford's voice went flat. Then let me be clear. The CDC has contracts with Fleet Command worth billions. We fund colony missions, research stations, supply lines. If this investigation becomes a witch hunt targeting my company, those contracts could be reevaluated. Are you threatening the fleet? Drake asked quietly. The CDC and the military have a mutually beneficial relationship. It would be unfortunate if baseless accusations damaged that relationship. Kira stepped closer to Ashford, close enough that he had to look down at her, close enough that he could probably see the healing scars on her face, the ones she'd earned killing warriors twice her size. Let me state a fact, she said. 15,000 people almost died because someone gave the Zenthari classified information. Men, women, families. If your company had anything to do with that, no amount of money or contracts will save whoever's responsible. I'll make sure of it personally. Ashford stared at her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Not fear exactly, more like calculation. Like he was reassessing a variable in an equation. I'll be in touch, Commander, he said finally, then turned and left without another word. Drake waited until the door closed. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. But he knows something. Did you see his face when I mentioned the investigation? I saw. Fleet Intelligence is already looking into CDC personnel with access to the transport's information. So far, nothing concrete. But there are some interesting financial transactions that don't quite add up. Bribes? Possibly. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Drake sat down in the chair beside her bed. There's something else. We've been monitoring Zenthari communications since the jump. They're talking about you. Kira frowned. What are they saying? We only caught fragments, but the translation team put together something interesting. They're calling you the Silent Roar. Apparently the warriors you killed transmitted enough battle data before they died that word spread through their fleet. A lone human female who fought like a berserker and wouldn't stop no matter how many times she was wounded. That's not accurate. I stopped plenty of times. To reload, mostly. Drake smiled slightly. The Zenthari don't see it that way. To them, you're something new. Something they didn't expect. They'd been fighting humanity for 10 years, and we've mostly responded with standard military tactics. Formations, strategies, combined arms. But you just came at them like a force of nature. Good. Let them wonder. There's more. The intercepted transmissions suggest the Zenthari High Command is issuing new protocols for engaging human opponents. Increased caution. Revised threat assessments. They're taking us more seriously now, because one woman with a wounded cat decided protocol didn't matter as much as doing what was right. Whisker stirred in his bed, stretched, and meowed. Kira picked him up carefully, mindful of his injured leg. The cat immediately started purring and rubbing his head against her chin. Any word on the traitor? She asked. We've narrowed it down to 3 suspects. All CDC employees embedded with the fleet as civilian contractors. All had access to the necessary information. All made unusual financial transactions in the weeks before the attack. Arrest them. Not yet. If we move too soon, we might miss whoever's pulling the strings. These 3 are probably just the connection point. We need to let the investigation run its course. See where the money trail leads. While the real culprit escapes, while we build a case that will actually hold up, I know it's frustrating, but we need to do this right. Kira stroked Whisker's head, feeling the rumble of his purr against her palm. How long until we reach New Eden? 4 more days. The colonists will start waking up tomorrow. They'll want to know what happened. what you did. Don't tell them. Just say there was an attempted boarding that was successfully repelled. Vance, you're a hero. You saved 15,000 lives. They deserve to know who protected them. They deserve to reach their new home and start their new lives without thinking about how close they came to dying. Tell them it was a team effort. Tell them fleet security did their job. Don't make it about me. Drake studied her face. You really mean that? I didn't do it for glory or recognition. I did it because it needed doing. Because those people couldn't protect themselves, and someone had to. That's all. That's not all, and you know it. You did it because your cat was hurt and you were angry. You did it because 3 years ago you lost your daughter, and you weren't going to lose anyone else. You did it because somewhere along the way you decided that following orders mattered less than doing what was right. That's what makes you different, Vance. That's what makes you dangerous. Kira met his eyes. Dangerous to who? To anyone who thinks humanity is predictable. To anyone who thinks we'll just follow the rules, when those rules would get innocent people killed. To the Zentharis, certainly. But also to people like Ashford, who see everything as transactions and profit margins. Drake stood up. Get some rest. Tomorrow, the colonists wake up, and we'll need all hands to help with the transition. The day after that, Fleet Intelligence wants to debrief you about the battle. And the day after that, we reach New Eden, and you get to decide what comes next. What do you mean? I mean you have options now. The CDC offer was real, even if Ashford's motivations are suspect. Other organizations will make offers too once word gets out. You could write your own ticket. I want to stay in the fleet. Even after everything? Even knowing that following orders almost got those colonists killed? Kira looked down at Whisker, who had fallen asleep in her arms, still purring. Especially after everything. The fleet needs people who remember why we're really fighting. Not for territory or resources or political leverage. For the people who can't fight for themselves. For the families trying to build new lives. For the future we're supposed to be protecting. Drake nodded slowly. Then the fleet is lucky to have you, Lieutenant. I'll make sure Command knows that. He left. Kira settled back onto the bed, Whisker warm and safe against her chest. Through the viewport, stars streaked past in the distorted patterns of hyperspace. Somewhere out there, the Zenthar were regrouping, planning their next move. Somewhere on this ship, a traitor was probably destroying evidence and preparing to disappear. And somewhere in cryo-storage, 15,000 people slept peacefully, unaware of how close they'd come to never waking up. Kira closed her eyes and let Whisker's purring lull her towards sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, everyone was safe. That was enough. New Eden filled the viewport like a promise, finally kept. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in atmospheric patterns that looked almost too perfect to be real. The colonists crowded against every available window, pressing their faces to the glass, some crying, others laughing, all of them seeing their future spread out below. Kira stood apart from the crowd, Whisker perched on her shoulder with his healing leg tucked carefully against her neck. The cat's purr was a constant vibration she'd grown used to over the past week. Dr. Chen had cleared him for light activity. Walking, climbing, sitting on shoulders while his human did paperwork. Beautiful, isn't it? A voice said beside her. She turned. The woman from the corridor, the one with the little boy, stood there holding her son's hand. The child stared at Kira with wide eyes, then hid partially behind his mother's leg. It is, Kira agreed. I never got to properly thank you. My name is Rachel Bennett. This is my son, Connor. The boy waved shyly. Kira waved back. You don't need to thank me, Kira said. I was just doing my job. Your job is to fight off 40 alien warriors by yourself while wounded. Rachel smiled slightly. Because I asked Commander Drake what happened. He tried to be vague, but the crew talks. Everyone knows what you did. The crew exaggerates. The crew says, you're the reason my son is alive. I don't think that's an exaggeration. Connor tugged on his mother's hand. Mama, is she the lady who fights monsters? Rachel knelt down beside him. She's the lady who protects people. That's even better than fighting monsters. The boy considered this, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small plastic toy, a battered action figure missing one arm. He held it out to Kira solemnly. You can have Captain Courage. He protects people too. Kira felt something crack in her chest. She knelt down, ignoring the twinge in her healing ribs, and accepted the toy with equal solemnity. I'll take good care of him. Connor beamed. Then he noticed Whisker and his eyes went even wider. You have a cat. This is Whisker. He's a soldier too. Can I pet him? Kira glanced at Whisker, who studied the child with typical feline inscrutability. Then the cat leaned forward and bumped his head against Connor's outstretched hand. The boy giggled and gently stroked the cat's ears. He's so soft, Connor whispered. Did he fight monsters too? He got hurt by them. That's why I had to make sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. Rachel's eyes glistened. She mouthed a silent thank you. Kira nodded. The ship's intercom crackled. Drake's voice filled the passenger deck. All colonists, this is Commander Drake. We'll be landing at Settlement Site Alpha in approximately 2 hours. Please return to your assigned sections and prepare for atmospheric entry. On behalf of the entire crew of the Meridian, welcome home. The crowd erupted in cheers. Connor hugged his mother's leg. Rachel smiled at Kira one more time, then led her son back toward their section. Kira stood and made her way toward the bridge, Whisker still balanced on her shoulder. The corridors were busy with crew preparing for landing. People nodded as she passed. Some saluted. She'd asked Drake to keep her role quiet, but it hadn't worked. Good news traveled faster than light in confined spaces. The bridge was controlled chaos. Officers called out landing vectors, atmospheric readings, surface conditions. Drake stood at the center of it all, orchestrating the descent with practiced efficiency. He saw Kira enter and gestured her over. Thought you'd want to be here for this, he said. Wouldn't miss it. How's the cat? Whisker meowed as if answering for himself. Drake smiled. Fleet Intelligence finished their investigation this morning, Drake said quietly, keeping his voice below the bridge noise. They found the traitor. Kira's hand went instinctively to where her sidearm would normally be. She wasn't armed today. Didn't need to be. Who? Junior communications officer named Martin Cross. CDC contractor embedded with the crew 6 months ago. He was feeding the Zenthari our routes, schedules, defensive capabilities, everything. Why? Money. The Zenthari paid him 2 million credits to help them capture a colony transport intact. They wanted the ship's technology, the cryo systems, maybe the colonists themselves for leverage. Cross thought he was just selling information. Didn't realize he was setting up a massacre. Where is he now? In the brig. Fleet security arrested him an hour ago. He'll be transferred to military custody when we reach the surface. And the CDC? Was Ashford involved? Drake shook his head. No evidence connecting him directly. Cross acted alone, as far as we can tell. But someone at CDC had to recommend him for this posting. Someone who either knew what he was doing or was criminally negligent in their vetting process. That investigation is ongoing. Kira looked out the forward viewport at the growing planet below. Will he face the death penalty? Treason during wartime. Conspiracy to commit mass murder. Espionage. Yes. Almost certainly. Drake paused. Does that bother you? No. He made his choice. 15,000 lives for 2 million credits. He knew what he was doing. The Zenthari who hired him are dead. You killed most of them personally. Does that feel like justice to you? Kira thought about it. About the warriors she'd faced in the corridors. About the sounds they'd made as they died. About the purple blood on her hands and the screaming in her ears and the endless forward motion toward the next threat. It feels like I did what needed doing, she said finally. Justice is for courts and judges. I was just trying to keep people alive. The ship shuddered as they hit the upper atmosphere. Warning lights flashed. Officers called out readings. The viewport blazed with the orange glow of re-entry fire. Landing in 90 seconds, someone announced. Drake moved to his command chair. Kira stayed by the viewport, one hand on Whisker to keep him steady as the ship descended through clouds and winds toward the landing pad that had been prepared for them. She could see it now, a cleared area on a plateau overlooking a valley. Prefab structures already in place, supply containers stacked and waiting. The beginning of something new. The Meridian touched down with barely a bump. The crew let out a collective breath. Drake stood and addressed the bridge. Well done, everyone. Let's get these people home. The airlocks began cycling. The first colonists emerged onto New Eden soil, some kneeling to touch the ground, others just standing and breathing air that wasn't recycled or filtered. Families reunited. Children ran laughing across the landing pad. It was everything a new beginning was supposed to be. Kira watched from the bridge until Drake touched her shoulder. "Come on," he said. "You should be down there. You are in this moment as much as any of them. I'm not a colonist. I'm just passing through. You're the reason they got here. That means something." She followed him down to the surface, Whisker still on her shoulder. The air was different here, cleaner somehow, with a hint of something floral she couldn't identify. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth standard. Every step felt easier. Rachel and Connor spotted her from across the landing pad and came running over. The boy crashed into her legs in an enthusiastic hug. Rachel followed more carefully. "Thank you," Rachel said again, "for everything." Kira awkwardly patted Connor's head. "Build something good here. That's all the thanks I need. Will you stay? Help us build?" "No, I'm Fleet. I go where I'm ordered." "That's a shame." "We could use someone like you." Connor released her legs and looked up with big, serious eyes. "Will you come visit, maybe someday, if I'm in the neighborhood?" The boy seemed satisfied with that. He ran off to explore the new world with a group of other children. Rachel lingered a moment longer. "You lost someone, didn't you? That's why you fought so hard. That's why you wouldn't let anyone else die." Kira didn't answer, didn't need to. The look on her face said enough. Rachel squeezed her hand once, then followed her son toward their new life. Drake appeared at Kira's side. "Fleet Command sent new orders while we were landing. The Meridian is heading back to base for repairs and resupply. But you have a choice. You can transfer to another ship, take leave on New Eden, or accept a new assignment." "What kind of assignment?" "Training position at Fleet Academy, teaching tactical combat to new officers. They want someone who can show cadets what real fighting looks like. Someone who won't sugarcoat the realities of war. That's not me. I'm not a teacher. The alternative is field assignment, another transport, another mission, another chance for things to go wrong." Kira looked out at the colony taking shape around them, at the families beginning their new lives, at the children playing in alien soil, at everything she'd fought to protect. Then she looked up at the sky, where stars were beginning to appear as the sun set on New Eden's first day of human settlement. "I'll take the field assignment," she said. "Someone has to make sure the next transport makes it safely." Drake nodded like he'd expected that answer. "Orders will be ready when we lift off tomorrow. Until then, you're officially on shore leave. Enjoy the planet while you can." He walked away, leaving Kira alone with Whisker and the endless possibilities of a new world. The cat meowed and head-butted her chin. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I know. But this is what we do, buddy. This is who we are." Whisker purred his agreement. And as night fell over New Eden, Lieutenant Kira Vance stood watching the stars.